Donald Trump campaigned in 2016 on ending America's wars abroad. In the final days of his presidency, he's acting to cut numbers in both Iraq and Afghanistan. From 4,500 in Afghanistan, the number will drop to 2,500. It'll be the same number in Iraq, where there are currently more than 3,000 personnel. Afghanistan is the US's longest war. It's lasted 19 years. More than 2,300 soldiers have died. It's cost more than $193 billion. Earlier this year, the US, with the help of Qatar, negotiated a deal with the Afghan Taliban to bring a permanent ceasefire and remove all foreign forces out of the country by May next year. In October, Donald Trump tweeted he wanted all US service personnel home by Christmas, December 25th.
Okay, so they found, apparently down in Floyd County, Georgia, they realized that somebody did not upload from a memory card or memory stick something like 2,600 votes. They say it's human error. Does that change anything for the Trump camp?
Well, this continues to prove what we've been saying all along, that each step we take to protect election integrity, if it's this hand recount in Georgia where all of a sudden they have found 2,600 additional votes, that's 2,600 Georgians who almost didn't have their voice heard in the presidential election. This is another step toward us being able to make sure that this is a free and fair election, that we can trust the results. And while some members of the mainstream media and Democrats want to say this is done and over with, not only did we find those 2,600 votes in Georgia, there were 8,000 additional new votes counted in Pennsylvania yesterday. This is still very much ongoing. And on behalf of President Trump and the campaign, the millions of Americans who voted for him, we want to make sure we get this right.
Abiy Ahmed assures that the war is nearing its end as he says federal forces are getting ready to take back the regional capital, Mekelle. On Tuesday, the government said that it has taken back several cities in the north and northwestern part of the Tigray region, and fighting continued in the south of the region around the city of Alamata, located about 120 kilometers south of Mekelle. Verifying information about this conflict is still very difficult, with phone connections and internet connections still shut down in the region, and access to the region is impossible, let alone independent reporting, with only a few members of the state media allowed to report on the ground. The Tigray People Liberation Front is saying that Eritrea is involved in the conflict and that Eritrean troops are fighting Tigrayan forces on the ground, a claim that the Ethiopian government has repeatedly denied, but again, very difficult to verify this information.
French documentary The Monopoly of Violence exposes and examines police brutality in France, focusing on recent yellow vest protests, but also taking in the suburbs. A harrowing watch, it uses footage shot by journalists or members of the public. Showing clips like this, though, may not be possible in the future. The French government has proposed a new security law, part of which would crack down on the broadcast or sharing of images of police officers. Filmmaker David Dufresne says the bill destroys basic freedoms.
The lawmakers want to stop the free circulation of information and knowledge because in the last few years France has discovered police violence. It's something that in reality has existed for a very long time in the suburbs, but was not documented in this way.
Three ex-lawmakers in Hong Kong were arrested on Wednesday morning over May and June incidents when foul-smelling liquid was thrown in the city's legislature. The pro-democracy former legislators Ted Hui, Ray Chan and Eddie Choi Hoi Dik confirmed their arrests on their Facebook pages. The news comes after Hong Kong's opposition lawmakers resigned en masse last week in protest against the dismissal of 4 colleagues, in a move they see as another push by Beijing to suppress democracy in the city. The walkout by the opposition means an end to one of the few forums for dissent in Hong Kong after Beijing imposed a sweeping national security law on the city. Back in June, live TV footage showed lawmakers Eddie Chu and Ray Chan rushing to the front of the chamber, splashing the reeking fluid as guards grabbed them, during a debate over a controversial bill that would criminalise disrespect of China's national anthem.
Conservatives say the current approach to China isn't working. They want the federal government to get tougher on the communist regime.
Canadians are worried we aren't doing enough to stand up to Chinese aggression. But now is the time to act. This is what our motion intends to do. First, we call upon the government to finally grow a spine and make a decision on Huawei's involvement in Canada's critical 5G network within 30 days of the adoption of this motion. Second, we ask that the government develop a robust plan, as Australia has done, to combat China's growing foreign influence operations here in Canada and its increasing intimidation of Canadians.
Those comments come as the government introduces sweeping new laws to guard your online privacy.
Turkey has reintroduced a series of coronavirus restrictions, including partial weekend lockdowns, in a bid to slow the surge of COVID-19 cases there. The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan saying a weekend curfew will be imposed between 8 p.m. and 10 a.m. Now, restaurants and cafes are allowed to serve takeaway meals only, while shops, markets and hairdressers only able to operate outside the curfew hours.
Well, the government would say it is, but the fact is, as you have just indicated, Stuart, that these are limited measures, and Turkish doctors say they will not be enough. The Turkish Medical Association wants the government to implement a full lockdown for at least 14 days. The Medical Association says hospital intensive care units are full. You've got to reduce the number of patients urgently, and the only way to do that is by taking drastic measures.
Boeing is set to win approval from US regulators on Wednesday to put its 737 MAX back in the skies. It comes after the jet was grounded last year following 2 fatal crashes. 346 people were killed within 5 months in 2018 and 2019 when 2 MAX planes crashed in Indonesia and Ethiopia. It led to scores of investigations and cost the company around $20 billion. The subsequent 20-month grounding has been the longest in commercial aviation history. The Federal Aviation Administration is due to demand new pilot training and software upgrades to deal with a stall prevention system called MCAS. In both crashes, MCAS repeatedly shoved down the jet's nose as pilots struggled to regain control. The FAA also said it would no longer allow Boeing to sign off on the airworthiness of some 450 already built 737 MAXs. Instead, it plans on in-person inspections that could take a year or more to complete.
A Beijing-based professor has claimed that China used microwave weapons against Indian soldiers in recent clashes that apparently allowed the PLA troops to recapture hilltops in India's Ladakh region. India has rubbished the claims, with the Indian Army issuing a statement on Tuesday night that they remain in control of the high ground. The Chinese professor claimed that PLA troops honored the decades-old agreement of not using firearms at the Indo-China border and resorted to microwave radiation instead and turned the mountain tops into microwave ovens which apparently caused Indian troops to vomit and flee on August 29th. The professor was quoted by a UK newspaper. The professor, named Jin Kangrong of International Relations at the Beijing-based Renmin University, offered no explanation as to how he had access to these strategic details.
It was a bombshell, unprecedented, when the former head of the Mexican Armed Forces, General Salvador Cienfuegos, was arrested by US authorities in Los Angeles airport. But now there's been a bigger shock. In an extremely unusual U-turn, the US has decided not to prosecute him and to send him back to his homeland. Cienfuegos was accused of trafficking drugs to the US and protecting a cartel from Mexican and US law enforcement. Prosecutors said one of his nicknames was El Padrino, the Godfather. The Mexican Foreign Minister, Marcelo Ebrard, welcomed the move to return him.